So the thing with money is that when we don't have it, it seems a lot. When we do have it, it seems too little. And usually it's running around chasing our tails in order to achieve it. It greatly depends on what we do. It greatly depends on where we want to go. And this, in essence, justifies the sources we're going to be looking at and exercising our effort to receive funding or financing. So what I have today for you is just a selection of sources that we have out there. I think I've taken funding from all of them. So I've been through the loops, and but it also it's very dependent on what you do. So let me start. Webinar notices, mute your microphone, use the chat for questions, and so on. So the agenda. We're going to be talking about equity funding. And within equity funding, we have venture capital funds, business angels or angel investors, crowd equity, and accelerators. We're going to be talking about crowdfunding as an activity, grant funding, how you can receive funds for anything that has to do with running your business without having to return them, in essence, debt financing, which is the typical loans you can get, and national financing, which are national programs that are running in every country. So the idea is that, first of all, we're going to map the landscape of the funding sources out there. But most importantly, what we need to do, and this is where I need your feedback and discussion and open your mics and talk about it, we need to understand where we fit in all of these categories. We probably fit in more than one, but we cannot always fit in all. And typically we don't fit in the ones that we believe are suitable for us. And I'll explain why in the process. So this is a graph figure from Velocity Partners, it's a venture capital in Greece. And what it has the spread of funding that you can get at different levels, starting from the pre-seed level, which is where we have an idea, we need the first kind of cash to get us going, up to the point where we make a major business and we have an exit. The up to 100K, that's a general rule, up to 100K, usually we either have the money ourselves, we get money from friends, family and fools, this is how it's usually called in the business, accelerators and business angels. From 100 onwards up until, let's say, $500,000 to $3 million, there's again angel investors. We actually, in Ideas Forward, we closed the deal for 120 this week. And you can go up to 3 million, and then you can go to major venture capital funds or private equity firms or what have you, and you can go up millions and millions and millions. But we're talking about businesses that grow exponentially. And let me tell you more about that. The venture capital funds are private equity firms, which means that they are a collection of individuals putting in their money into let's say a bucket, and it's either only private money or it's public and private money and so on. So they create a fund that's usually several million, tens of millions, 40 million. Some of the typical funds in Greece are around 40 million euros. And the idea is that they want to invest this money into ventures that are potentially high growth. And not only can they reach the heights of any kind of venture that reaches millions of euros in valuation within a few years, but they also have to do that in an exponential fashion. Now, the table that I have on the right says that founders almost always believe that they are in the low risk, high return region. This is almost never the case. Right? Because we have an idea and we feel so strongly about it, we are positioned to believe that what we have is something excellent. It usually You can address that to everyone in the market, be it businesses or consumers, and it's a very, very low risk because we know what we're doing. Well, usually this is not the case, and the case for VCs is that they want to see something that has high risk and high return. Why? Because the highest the risk, the higher the return can be. Of course, the highest the risk, the more easily a business can go broke or stop operating and so on. Startups are usually in the high risk, low return region because we, and I say we because I've been through that, we are usually miscalculating not only the risk we are taking but also the market we are in. The thing with VCs is that when they want to invest, they have to treat every single investment that they do as being able to return 10 times the investment amount. So for instance, if a VC invests 300,000 euros, they want within 5 to 7 years to get a return of 3 million euros. When they invest something like 300,000 euros, they will usually get something like 10 to 20%, depending on the business. So in order for them to get 3 million euros back, it means that the business has to be at least 30 million or 15 million. So we are talking within 5 or 7 years. So we are talking about businesses that have the potential to grow very fast and become very profitable. This is one way of dealing with what you have and the kind of business you want to create. Is this the kind of business that can reach this kind of valuation within 5 to 7 years? If not, then you are not VC material. So this is one out of the game. Business angels or angel investors are typically entrepreneurs themselves or people that have wealth, and they invest in very early stage startups. And the common case is that they usually know the kind of sector the startup is, and they understand the value that is to be created. So in this case, they will invest tickets depending on the country and the kind of investor that you are dealing with. They might invest from 5,000 euros to 100 and 200,000 euros, depending on the country, depending on the kind of angel investor and so on. In their case, what they want to do is to invest in companies that are either VC type, meaning high risk, high return, or they are of lower medium risk and medium return, because they want to get into a game that's infinite. I don't know if anyone has read the Infinite Game from Simon Sinek. They have this kind of, in this book, he has this kind of explanation about what is an infinite game and what is a finite game. So business per se is an infinite game. There are no winners or losers, right? So it can go on and on. If you invest in something that's of medium risk and medium return, and it actually pans out, it means that you're going to get dividends for a long time. So angels are within that space. However, they're not in anything that has high risk and low return. It doesn't make any sense to them. And of course, low risk and low return makes absolutely no sense to anyone, not even to us. The good thing with business angels is that there is a European business angel network, and each country, including Greece and almost all countries in Europe, they have a business angel network in place. This means that business angels are easy to find, easy to approach, and it gives you an opportunity to find them within your own local, national ecosystem. You can go, I've got, in every single slide, I've got sources underneath, so when you get it, you can go there and search for everything else. The European business angels have thus far invested for the last 10 years 11.4 billion euros in the market. So it's not a negligible amount. It's somewhat comparable to what VCs are doing in Europe. And you can get people that might have a suggestion or might be interested in the business model that you are running. So this is always an option. The last equity funding option is crowd equity. Crowd equity is where you go on a crowd equity platform like Crowdcube, Seedlink, funded by me and so on. There are several in Europe. You post your business case. You need to have some kind of traction. In all equity discussions, you need to prove that you have traction to your business, which means that you have to be already set up. You have to have your first customers, showcase that your business is growing fast. And it's exactly the same with crowd equity platforms. The good thing with crowd equity platform is that they attract people that are not your typical business angel or angel investor. There are people who can pay very small tickets of 1,000 or 100 euros, 1,000 and so on. So they can collect out of this, out of the crowd, they can collect the kind of amount that you need to go forward. Out of these options, I've received in the past angel funding from an idea stage. And this is because I knew the business angel, and he knew that I could actually build the business that I was talking to. He also considered that the market size is enough, and he invested his money. My partners have received money from VCs and angels as well. We've never tried the crowd equity, and the reason is that in Greece at least it's not as regulated as in other countries, but there's always that option. So this concludes basically the equity fund escape. Again, to summarize, you need to have your business set up, almost. You need to be able to, there's another option. There's the accelerators. There's the Global Accelerator Network, and some of the accelerators within Europe, in our case, they are in a position where you go off when you finish the acceleration program and they see fit, they can give you some kind of funding in return for equity. For those of you who are not familiar with the term equity, it's basically a number of stock options in your company. So they get part of your company in order to give you the money for you to do your job. Depending on the amount you get and the valuation you have, I mean how much is your business value evaluated in the market, this kind of money has a different percentage. So these are the basic options for equity. Equity, again, usually you have to have some kind of traction or validation of your business model. You have to be addressing a market that is fairly large, and you have to be able to justify why the money you need will make you grow faster than typical businesses. So this is the overall idea with equity funding. So the second option is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a very popular option, especially when you want to pre-sell something. So for instance, you are a company that is building, you are in the circular economy space, and you are building let's say a chair out of recycled plastic. You can create a prototype instead of investing in a production line, investing into building many chairs and so on. You can, you can go on a crowdfunding platform, say this is what I'm doing. Here's a video of how I do it, and the price of it is that much, let's say, 25 euros. And if you want one today, I'll be able to produce them in 3 months from now or 6 months from now, but if you want one today, you can buy it at this price. So basically what happens is that you create a pre-sale campaign, and if enough people buy your product, then you are okay to start your production and say, okay, this makes sense, so I'm going to start a business out of it. Usually what happens with crowdfunding platforms is that you have a limit. Let's say you're asking for 100,000, right? You have a limit and saying that if I get less than 100,000, then all the money will be returned to those who bought the product. If I make more than 100,000, then I'm going to collect the money and I'm going to do the production. So there's some safeguarding in these processes. Two of the most popular crowdfunding platforms so far are Kickstarter. Kickstarter, since up until 2021, has raised $6.5 billion. It started off in America, now it's in Europe. it was a great success, especially for ventures that are not VC material, like let's say building a local venture that builds plastic chairs out of recycled plastic. This is not a VC type venture, but you can pre-sale your items and then see if there's enough interest for you to start the venture. So you are basically, what you are doing is that you validate the assumption that this would be something people want. And once this is validated, then you can move on to actually creating a business and start the expenses required for setting up a business, your offices, your production line, and so on and so forth. Another very popular platform is Indiegogo. Indiegogo has supported over 800,000 ideas since 2008. The good thing to remember about this kind of platform is that they can also facilitate non-profit activities, social enterprises, businesses that are not typical arts, filmmaking, things like that, things that are not typically returned to the person. So these are donations in essence, right? Typically you will not return something to those who donated money, but they will feel happy with themselves for supporting you to create something new. So crowdfunding platforms are very versatile, and it allows you, in our case, it allows you to test your hypothesis and validate your assumptions before spending money and time on something that might not be relevant with the market. Grant funding. Now this is the absolutely convoluted enigma wrapped up in a, what was the expression? The thing is that there are grants out there, especially from the European Union, to support new businesses into advancing their research, providing their products as pilots for research, or providing access to people, in a nutshell. Now, the Commission priorities, the European Commission's priorities for this decade are for a competitive and smarter Europe, for a greener, low-carbon transitioning towards net zero carbon economy, which means all of you, for a more connected Europe by enhancing mobility, a more social and inclusive Europe, and fostering the sustainable and integrated development of all types of territories across Europe. The thing is that Europe, I suppose most of you have read about it and have knowledge of it, is that at some point in the future it's going to lead into a federalized state of all countries within Europe. So Europe is spending tons of money to be able to get everyone involved in the European construct, but also through this to make Europe as competitive as possible over other markets out there. Now, the thing with EU funding is that everybody is eligible. Whether you have a small and medium-sized business, whether you are a non-profit organization, young people through Erasmus+, researchers, farmers, public bodies, whatever kind of entity you have, you can in some way or some form or another, participate in a grant given out by the European Union. The biggest, let's say, grant process that the European Union has to do with funding and tendering, funding of research projects. So what you see here is that on the image on the right now, there are over 12,841 research projects coming out in the following years. The way you would participate in a research project like that is that somebody, let's say an academic institute, a research organization, or an SME, has a concept of a project. Let's say the concept is how can we minimize plastic waste in our cities. So they find the call that is relevant, they attract academic institutes, research institutes, SMEs, non-profits, small businesses like the ones we are creating, right? And they say, okay, this is the concept, this is the kind of research that we want to do, and this is the kind of people and pilots that we need to run in order to prove that this kind of research actually has an impact in society, the environment, and so on. This is not something that typically a small business will instigate, but there is a way of putting yourself out there and saying, okay, this is my business, this is what we do, and we are available to participate in a research grant. The process of doing that is by getting into that page, for instance, that you see, registering your company, creating a profile, and then finding all the research projects that might be relevant or familiar or interesting to you and putting in your partner search profile. This would allow anyone actively seeking for new partners to find your profile and potentially call you in a consortium to take part. So this is the most complex process that is out there. It's not that complex once you do it, but it's complex when you first look at it, to participate in a research project. Now, the other thing that Europe does, because it realizes that there is a barrier for a very small business or a startup, a new startup, to be able to participate in a research project or understand the process and so on, is the so-called coordinated support action research projects, where it says, and I'll give you a silly example, hello consortium, you are thinking of something that has to do with recycling plastic waste. I'm going to give you 10 million euros for your project, but 2 of them you will be you will be organizing open calls, competitive calls as they're called, and you will be giving those 2 out to ventures that want to participate in a very simplified process of submitting a proposal, and if it makes sense, then you can go. In the case of research project, you go with a consortium, which means that you are typically from 5 to 15, 20 partners, depending on the size of the project. In the case of competitive calls, you can go alone. So you can draft a proposal for your company or your effort, and you can submit it, provided that it's relevant to the competitive call, and potentially receive funding. I've written proposals like that for startups. They have received funding like that, and it was actually the first pre-seed funding that they received, and they took their startup off the ground, and now they are on their way to receiving a couple of millions in VC funding and so on. So it helped them validate their assumptions, reduce the risk, and have a very solid case to present to VCs moving forward. The other part of the European Union grant process is the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. European Union at some point decided that my results in terms of the research grants right now, in terms of moving technology to the market, are not exceptional. I need to do that. I need to spread money around the European Union. I need people collaborating and getting to know each other so that we feel as one family. I need to upskill my personnel, the European personnel that we have, so we are competitive. But we don't have the kind of results that we were expecting. So they started an experiment with the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and they said that let's build public-private partnerships, so between the European Union and large enterprises, academia, research institutes, and so on, and let's try to see how we can help startups, so new entrepreneurial efforts, get off the ground in a different way than research does. So they instituted the EIT, and they have instituted 9 knowledge and innovation communities. This is how they call it. Each knowledge and innovation community has to do with one particular sector. If you can see on the right, you have EIT Climate Kick, EIT Digital, EIT Food, Health, energy, raw materials, manufacturing, and so on. In the case of circular economy, typically it would fall under the raw materials or manufacturing or digital. And the thing with those knowledge innovation centers is that every year they have open calls out there for competitions, for grants, for funding, and for what have you. So it's another avenue of getting a grant, non-returnable, non-equity based grant, meaning that they will give you the money, they will take nothing from your company in terms of stock options, and help you with the funds and the network, especially the network that they have, to access the market, especially if you're looking for internationalizing, getting off borders with what you're doing. The third and final part about grants are typical competitions. These are competitions that we have in our local ecosystems, local, regional, national ecosystems, where we might have a startup pitch competition, we might have some company through corporate social responsibility running a contest or things like that, and usually they're followed by either in-kind services, meaning that they will give you time or access to equipment or resources or what have you, or monetary awards. Just as an example, last summer we ran an accelerator, Ideas Forward ran an accelerator in the Thessaloniki, Greece, and the awards that we had at the end were 20,000 euros. So it wasn't negligible. The teams got training, they got coaching. We created a mentor network of about 50 people out from the market and in various sectors. And we also gave out monetary awards. So competitions are also a nice way of showcasing, especially showcasing what you have. It doesn't really matter if you win, but the fact that you are going to be showcasing what you do is always important, because you might get new customers, you might get interest from people other than the people organizing the competition. And maybe if you're good enough or compare good enough with other participants, you might get an award prize. Financing, if you do not manage to get a grant, and if you are not VC material, and your friends and family don't want to know you, debt financing is the way to go. The thing is that you have two different debt financing tools, right? One is you can go to a bank and get a loan. Usually this comes with collateral. I mean, I've taken bank loans for my businesses. I've put down my house as a collateral, actually my parents' house as a collateral. And the thing is with debt, that if it's reasonable, we're talking about 20, 40,000, 50,000 euros, right? You can pay it off. It's not that much. It doesn't take any equity from your business, and the interest rates right now are record low, very low, right? So it's not something bad, it's something that you can repay in time. And actually the business that I took the loan for flopped, right? Didn't go through. I repaid the loan from my wage. I worked somewhere else, repaid the loan. It's not that difficult. The other side of the coin is the microloans. The European social, I can't remember the name. Anyway, Europe has a, let's say, department that has to do with social inclusiveness. From this department, the European Progress Microfinance Facility sprang out. And the idea of it was to give up to 25,000 euros in microloans without collateral. It had the same rules in terms of interest rate, but you didn't have to put down your house or anything like that to get it. And it was mainly addressed to underserved groups. So people who don't have the credit line to be able to go to a bank and get a loan, but through microloans, they were, and this kind of financial providers, they were microcredit providers, as they're called. They are able to get it. I've had teams that got that, and it allowed them to get kick-started, and then they repaid it and moved on with other financing tools. So microloans and bank loans, they're not that bad, right? I know that nobody likes banks. I don't like banks. But this kind of leveraging other people's money allows you to create value at a time when you are not able to do that. So when you create value, you repay the loan, get it off your back, and then you move forward with your business. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands and millions of euros in debt financing. You have to have some type of collateral that allows you to do that, and you have to have some type of business that has actually proven that it can repay that. So don't go wild, but they're not a bad choice. National financing. The European Union and the national governments have programs that are national, regional, local in order to in order to address unemployment, in order to upskill people, in order to help people become entrepreneurs and create new added value in the society and the economy, and other objectives, national objectives. Every country has different programs like that. In Greece, the main, not organization, but the main part of the government that does that is called DESPA. And they have programs for new entrepreneurship. They have programs for subsidizing new employees, programs for subsidizing revamping your infrastructure or buying new equipment and things like that. These are programs that are in every country. So we have a list here with some of the programs in Turkey, Greece, Belgium, Netherlands, Lithuania, and Spain. You're going to get this list, everyone. And obviously, I'm sure that everyone in your own respective countries know more than me and us, what is out there and available. I think this is it.